Hey, kia ora. We are back again. My apologies for having to break from part 2 to go get my groceries, but they got delivered, even though it said that she was still like 5 miles away or whatever. Now, where did we leave off? Oh, yeah, I was on the hill. So just to catch you up, if you haven't watched part 2 yet, I was doing my driver's test. Yeah. So yeah, it was quite a comical moment. At the time it wasn't. I was stressing out like crazy because my wheel was caught up against this gutter guard and I couldn't back up because there was this pickup truck behind me. Then the passenger finally realized, the driver must be getting impatient or something, because the passenger realized that there was a cop sitting next to me and realized that I was taking a driving test. So he tapped the guy on the shoulder. He backed up. I was able to back up. It took me 3 attempts to get around that little hump thing. Meanwhile, these 2 women are across, sitting outside the doctor's office, which is where my mum worked, in absolute hysterics because there's only one green minivan. In fact, there was only one minivan period in the whole of the town of 6,500 people, and everybody knew who owned that minivan. And it was very obvious that the daughter of the family, the only daughter of the family, was taking her driver's test. So yeah, nothing like sticking out in a very recognizable vehicle while you're driving around town, having your driver's test done. Talk about extra pressure. But we finally got around the hump and everything and got my left turn done, which would be equivalent to, hang on. Yeah, help, over here. It'd be equivalent to doing it'd be equivalent to doing a right turn here. No, hang on. Now I'm confusing myself. Oh, yeah, I was doing a left turn. I had to do a left turn. I was trying to figure out what side I was sitting on, which is equivalent to doing a right turn here in the States. And there was a stop sign there and everything. So finally got there and got to go back down. My parallel park was like 4 car spaces long. I think after the trip up the hill and stuff, he felt a little sorry for me. I don't know. I don't care. I was able to parallel park. That was not a problem. We got back to the county office, to this county office where my dad's office was, and where the guy was using dad's office that day. And we had Sundays, and how'd you do? He goes, she passed. And I was like, thank goodness for that. It was like this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. But yeah, that was a very stressful driving thing. And I look back at now, and I just crack up laughing every time I think about what I went through that day, especially when it came to going up that hill and having to do a hill start in the minivan. And the minivan did not have a handbrake, so to speak, like one that you pull up. It was one that was down by the steering wheel that you had to pull on to release it. There was a lever thing there. So it was very different from what I'd learned in the car, which was the pull up one that's between the seats. This one was on the steering column down, and you had to reach for it, and you had to squeeze it, I think it was, to release it. So doing a hill start in that minivan was a very different experience, and having to do it for the very first time while in the middle of a test, as well as being on a hill you have never driven up or down before. So yes, that was a very intense day. But I got my driver's. I was 15, and I got my driver's license. Now they're telling me my groceries have been delivered. And so that was a very great experience in that. But I did not get and I was allowed to drive once in a while. I got to drive the family in the minivan through to like church or something like that. But I didn't do a lot of driving from after I got my license. But I had it. I did not get a car. I got my first car when I was 21 or 22. So it had been like 7 years. And what had happened was that my parents had picked up the secondhand car, and it was a bright yellow one, big bird. And it was a Ford Cortina, and I can't even think of what it's like here in the States. I was trying to rack my brains going, a Ford Cortina. What would be similar to a Ford Cortina back here, here in the States? And I can't think of one. I guess a Ford Focus would be close, I'm guessing. No, I think it was even bigger than that. But anyway, it was a great little car, and which wasn't little, it wasn't big either. So my parents had this car, and they were going to get rid of it. And I thought, what if I buy it off them? Then I could have my first car. So I actually bought my first car off my parents, who were going to sell, who for some reason had purchased the car, and I can't remember why. They needed a second car at the time, but they were done with needing a second car, and so they were going to sell it. So I said, well, can I buy it? And so I did. and had that car for like a couple of years, I think it was. And then I usually walked to the train stop to catch the train into town to go to work. And my mum was using my car one day, and she came home and she parked it half on the grass verge and half on the road. And of course, you had the grass verge, then the footpath, and then the property. And so a lot of people, and because the street was so narrow, you kind of had to do that, because if you got cars parked on the street on both sides, you were single lane for the entire length of the street. If it was the whole way down. And so she parked half up on the curb, half on the road. She took all the shopping out that she had gotten and taken all that inside. And she was on the phone with somebody at the time when she heard this almighty crash. And she told the person on the phone that she had to go because she thinks somebody just might have rammed into my car. And she goes out, and sure enough, what had happened is across from our home and up a little bit was the local primary school. And they had the dental house. The dental nurses were there, and the dental nurses are like dentists, but they are assigned to schools. And they have their own little clinic in a separate building, and they actually put the announcement across the PA system in the school. Helen, and that day it was Helen Eakins, please report to the dental office. And everybody was like, ooh, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have fun. I loved going to the dentist. I really did, because, 54 years old. I've never had a filling in my life. And these are all my own teeth. Never had them straightened. So, never had a cavity in my entire life. And so this dental nurse had gotten in her car to go leave, and she pulled out of the driveway of the school, which is across the road from our place, and across the road and one house down. And as she's pulling out onto the street, this bee, according to her, gets into the car, and she puts her foot down to try and get away from it. And of course, it puts it on the accelerator, not on the brake or anything, and it rams it straight into the back corner of my car, into the back driver's corner. And the car ended up having to be written off because of it. But everybody said that the woman was very, very lucky that Mum had parked it how she had, because she had it with such force. It took it from in the middle of in front of my parents' house, to the driveway of the house next door. And the dentist was told she was very lucky that my mother had parked it up on the grass, because had she parked it on the street, the impact would have killed the dental nurse, because it was such a huge impact, because she had just floored the accelerator down. So she was very fortunate that day of how my mum had parked the car. That was my first car. It got written off, and I eventually got another one, which is a little Holden Barina, which is like a Suzuki Swift. And that was a Swedish chef from the Muppets. Muppet names for the cars. But that was my first driving experience. My first car, I was 15 when I got my license. I was like 21 or 22 when I got my first car. I did a lot of miles in that car. I did a lot of going out and driving around, and even took a vacation by myself, driving all the way and staying with family and friends along the way. It was a great vacation. So what was your first car that you got? How old were you when you got your license? Did you get to drive to school or not? I didn't have a vehicle to drive to school. I had a friend who was in the same class as me, same age as me. The day she turned 15, her mother took her down to get her driver's license. And she had and when walking to school, because she lived out in the country, she would normally catch the bus in. But walking to school every morning, I would stop and pick up my friend on the way. And by the time we left her place, this little red car would go past us, and it was this friend of ours who was driving to school with her mother in the passenger seat. So her mother had her out on the road well before she should have been, because she was driving us up to school for months, and then her mother would take the car home again and then come back and pick her up, and she would drive home. And so the day she turned 15, her mum took it straight down to the office and had to do a driver's test straight away. And so from then on, she was then bringing this little red car to and from school every day by herself after that. So so there's lots of things that happened to that. And then it was years later, they brought in like a progressive license thing where you did the theory and you got your learner's permit, and then you had to go do your test, go do your practicing and your learning and all that, and then you got your provincial license before you got your full license. So there was a lot of I was like, I didn't have to do that. Yes. I was not expecting to get my license when I was 15. I was thinking I was going to get it when I was 16. So that's what my dad kept telling me. And then one day he takes me out, puts me in the van and says, this is how this works. Drive down there. This is how the clutch works. This is how the gears work. Now do this, 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 and this, and drive down the hill there to the backyard. So remember those drives around the backyard, and the number of times I stalled because we learned stick shift in New Zealand. At those times, it was sort of like at that time when I was learning to drive, it was almost a luxury to have an automatic vehicle, because they weren't widely available in New Zealand like stick shifts were. So, but that was that was my first driving experience and license and car and all that sort of thing. So, what was your first car that you had? What age were you when you got your license? Just all those sort of things about your first time driving and getting your license. And, did you have a car that you were able to use after you got your license, or did you have to sit and wait until you were able to buy your own car or something like that? So anyway, I'm out of here. I have got groceries to now go and unpack. We put the frozen stuff in the freezer already. I'm going to go put the refrigerated stuff away, and then we're off for our WA. Oh, I forgot to tell you about Smart Puppy today. So Puppy, Zippy is laying asleep on the bed in there. I'm busy working, and I look up, and on the screen, I can see that it's raining outside. Now, my dear friend Kathy Baxter came up with the term that Zeffy was looking out at the windows crying. So the windows cry. It doesn't rain, the windows cry. And so I look up, and I see the bits of the drops of water on the screen, and I yelled out, I said, Zeffy, the windows are crying. She flew. Like, I got that out of there, and the next thing I know, she flew down the RV up onto the thing, and she's like looking out the window, what's going on? And I'm like, oh my gosh, all the other times I've told her that, she did nothing. And then all of a sudden today, when I yelled that out, she comes flying down the RV, jumps up on the dashboard, and she's busy looking around. So I was like, wow, that's awesome. Because I never told her what to do with that before. And it's like when I tell her when I say Zeffy Patrol, and I point up to the dash, she goes up to the dash and gets up there, and she's like, okay, we're waiting for somebody. And like I told her that earlier, but just before I got on the part 2 live, because I wanted her to keep, because if I'm waiting for a delivery, it's always good to have her on patrol, because as soon as she sees a car pulling up or slowing down in front of us, she's on her feet and she's looking, what are you doing? You coming to see me? And then the tail starts to wag. And then when she sees they stop and run, she runs down to the door, runs back up to the window. So I know the delivery has arrived. So I just told her one day to go on patrol, and she got up there and starts looking out the window. So there's a lot of times I've just given her like the command for the first time, and she will do it. At the time I told her, come on, let's buckle up, and she comes and sits right beside me so I can put her seatbelt, her restraint buckle on, leash on for while we're driving and stuff. And so that was kind of like, wow, I've never said that before. So I start using that phrase, and she knows it's time to get hooked up to go for a walk or to go for driving. So anyway, very smart dog. I like that with a smart dog. I just gotta harness it and use it somehow. But anyway, we're out of here. Gotta go put the cold stuff away in the refrigerator, and then we're off for our WALK for the evening. So go have a super fantastic sparkling rest of your winning Wednesday. Don't forget to let us know in the comments below what wins you are celebrating for today, for the week, so we can celebrate with you. And we will catch you guys back here bright and early tomorrow morning for Thankful Thursday. Hey, konera.